Alright, it's your boy, TheKaneologist. We're going to be doing the question Island Perimeter. Alright, let's try it. You're given row X call grid representing a map where IJ equals 1 represents land, IJ 0 represents water. Grid cells are connected horizontally, vertically, not diagonally. The third is completely surrounded by water. And there is actually exactly one island or one or more connected cells. The island doesn't have lakes, meaning water inside isn't connected to the water around the island. One cell is a square with side length 1, okay. Grid is rectangular. Width and height do not exceed 100, okay. Determine the perimeter of the island. Determine the perimeter of the island. Okay. Let's start at the top of the cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there's 16 lines. If there's 16 lines, what do I do next? Let me clear this. Okay. So what we're doing is basically it's a 2-dimensional array, and each row stacks on top of each other to create an island. So for example, this is 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. Okay, so I'm trying to think about how I would approach this. I have to kind of classify what that means to be in an island. So, for example, if I'm at 1, like up here, and there's nothing adjacent to me, I get 3. If there is something adjacent to me, and it's only 1, I get 3. If there's something adjacent to me and something above and below me, I get 2. And then if there's something all around me, I get 0. So I have to create some sort of classification. This looks like a breadth first search problem. Because like I want to go this, look everything around it. This is 0, don't care. This is a 1, look everything around it. Then assign it the values. So I have to create some sort of value counter. So depending on what's around it, if there's only one thing around it, then I get 3. If there's more than one thing around it, I get 2. If there's things all around it, then I get 0. There's no case where you get one line on a square. So you can only get 3, 2, or 0, basically. And if you get 3, 2, or 0, the next thing is you have to do a BFS. So it's going to be like 0, I'm on an island square, so BFS it, give it a 3. 0, 0, don't care. Island square, BFS it, give it a 3. Island square, BFS it, give it a 0. Island square, BFS it, give it a 3. 0, 0, island square, BFS it, give it a 2. Island square, BFS 0, 0, island square, BFS it. So like you're pretty much doing some sort of breadth first search. That's what I mean by BFS. Looking at the area around it to get values. So I would like to know how to do that, but I'm not completely sure how to implement this. I'm not gonna lie. I'm at 9 minutes right now, almost 10. So about 10 minutes. This might take a while, but I have a feeling I have to create a helper function. and then go through each element. Yeah, I have to go through each element. So basically I need to create something to iterate through each square in this double array. If it's a 1, I've identified that it's an island square. Then I have to check if it's got items above, below, or around it. Above, below, or beside it. Then create conditions for if it's on the left corner, if it's on the left edge, if it's on the top edge. Or just create the conditions for it. So let's start by saying I could just make a total and then identify the conditions around each item. It's like draining my brain. So let's just loop through every element. So for I in range, I'm like falling asleep now. But basically, what I want to do is start. My brain is like fried right now. I'm like falling asleep as we do this again. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. But I persist. Shit, I'm like falling asleep during the question. Oh shit, I'm already at 22 minutes. I like slept through the whole question. Alright, I'm back. Oh my gosh, after this I'm gonna call it. But what I do want to do is create 2 for loops, iterate through both. So while it doesn't tell you a grid is, that's the thing. IJ, grid represents water. Grid IJ01. Oh, it's got grid length. Okay. Grid dot length is the number of rows, and then grid I length is the number of columns. That gonna solve the first part. So row I'm like sleeping right now. But I got the length, I got the rows and columns. So for I in row, well, I already get the length of it. So I in row, this is why like every Leetcode I gotta walk around and pace. So I keep the blood flowing, keep my mind sharp. Basically what I'm doing is So if grid ij equals 1, that's when we want to take a look at things. So I have to model this. So if grid is equal to 1, now I have to find its position in the grid. Is it the top? So I know whether or not to look above or below it. So if I equals 0, so if I equals it's got to be the top or bottom row. Because you'd also want to check if something's above or below it. So create a perimeter and temp. Perimeter is what we're going to add to at the very end, but we're going to increment temp. Basically, if I is the top row, we don't have to look above and below, we just have to look below. There's also got to be a way to check for adjacent, so left and right. So first I have to classify whether it's top and bottom. Oh, this is what I can do. This looks like the simplest way I can do it. Instead of a temp 0, I'm going to start at temp 4. Yeah, and then I need the positions of J. So whatever, like I mentioned, you can only have 4, 3, and 2. You can only have 4, 3, and 2. 4, 3, 2, or 0. So I'm going to start at the max amount. So temp equals 4. Because I'm iterating through each square in J. Then I increment. Then I go to the next row, each square in J. Then I increment each square in J, each square in J. So if I go each square in J and I is the top thing, I only have to care about first, let's check left and right. Let me create all the if conditions first so I don't overwhelm myself. If I equals 0 or if I equals length equals call, because this is call minus 1. So it's the end column. 0 is the first column, the other one's length. So this would be length minus 1. Then it's going to be adjacent. So first I'm going to check the row. Or the column. So if elif, so it's first, last, or middle. So this handles all the cases of columns. So if it's left, right, or if it's the... So basically, if grid I only care about the right. So if grid ij plus 1, so to the right one, so let's say I'm here, and it's filled in. So for example, if I'm here, if it's filled in, I only care if there's something beside it. If it's something beside it, I'm -1, so I lose this perimeter. And I only have to do one check. So if this temp minus equals 1, so now it's 3. If I'm at an end column here, I have to do the opposite, j -1, to see if something's to the left. And then if it's a middle column, I have to look to left and right. And I have to -1 for each. Temp -1. If column oh my gosh, falling asleep sometimes helps. Like, I pretty much fucking solved this thing. So temp minus equals 1, so now it's 3. And then else, I have to check both. So for example, if you're in a middle square, like this, you have to look at the left and right to see if something's 1 or not. So if I have to create 2 if statements, so it checks both. It checks the left and it checks the right. Not an if elif, because then it'll only check 1. So if I'll have to just copy paste both of these into the one, because this is not a corner. So this, there's nothing to the right, so I don't check the right. This, there's nothing to the left, so I don't check the left. This, there's right and left, so I have to check both. So that's what I'm going to do here. So since it's an if elif else, you can only have 3 or 2 after this, after this whole block. After this if else block, this will take this from 4 to either 3 or 2. So now I have to check if stuff is above and below it. So the same way, it's not going to be an elif. I'm going to create another if block. So if So right now we check the rows with I. Now I'm going to check the columns. Oh no, I checked the columns, now I gotta check the rows. So j equals 0. If j equals column minus 1. Wait, what the fridge? If j equals column minus 1. And that's why it's j plus 1, j minus 1. Because I gotta check columns first. Now I'm gonna check the rows. So if first I gotta check if it's a tile. Actually no, it's already checking here, so I just have to go in here, another if block, because it's within this if block. So this is a tile by default. So now I have to check if I equals 0, then it's a top row, which means there can be nothing below it. So I only have to check if grid I plus 1. So plus 1 is the next row, because right now I'm on row 0. I have to check row 1 to see if something's underneath it. So if something's underneath it at that same j position, so here, let's say here, so this is row 0, column 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Row 0, column 1. Now I go to row 1, column 1. Is there something underneath? Yes. So I have to go add 1, this. If that's a tile, then temp minus equals 1. Same thing, right? If it's the bottom row, I only have to check what's above it. So it's this minus 1. So I'm going to go elif, because it can only be a top row, a bottom row, or a middle row, right? So it has to be one of these three. And for the columns, it has to be the left tile, the left corner, right corner, or middle tile, right? So that's how you know. I'm actually impressed with myself for working through my freaking drowsiness. You know, we all train, work, but we find time to Leetcode, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I love each and every one of you for sticking through all this channel with me. I'm past 200 videos now. I'm past 200 videos. And I continue to be consistent, you know. And that's why you guys are here, because you guys want to watch a solver that's consistent, so that, because we're like-minded, right? You're probably a solver that's consistent. So I'm motivated by you, you're motivated by me, right? It's a win-win. Okay, so let's go to the next part. If elif, so same way we did corners, we have to do top and bottom rows. So if grid, so if it's a bottom row, I want to see what the thing above it is. So grid I minus 1, because I have to go backwards, back up. At the same position of j, is this a tile? And if so, lower temp by 1. If you're a top or bottom row, the top and bottom positions are positions that you could only lower by 1, because there's no other layer to check. You're only checking one layer down, or you're checking one layer up. Now for this middle layer, if I go to the else condition. The else condition, I'm going to have to check top and bottom. So I could lose a total of 2 for my grand total of 4. So I have to check both top and bottom. So now what I have, I know it's really long, but if you guys are following along, now what I have is a check at this temp. So every iteration of the J loop, temp is checked, right? So temp is checked and reset. So this whole block could either -1 or 2, and this whole block could either -1 or 2. So at most, both could -2, and you get something like this, where there's something left, right, up, and down. Temp becomes 0 from 4, right? There's a case like this, where it's on the top row. There's nothing to the left, there's nothing to the right, and there's a bottom. So you lose only 1. So temp becomes 3, right? So this whole block is designed to lower temp based on if there's another tile to the left, right, up, or down. So once we get that, once we go through all the checks, right, that means we make it out of this if block, because now it's a tile, which is why we checked. Now I want to go temp. Temp.add to perimeter. I can add it to perimeter. Then I'm going to turn temp back to 4, because on the next iteration of J, so let's say I start at this tile, for the next tile, and I have to do all these checks again. And then next tile, all these checks again. Next tile, all these checks again. Right? So every time we do this check, we have to add to perimeter. Until we get to the end. So I'm going to reset temp equals 4. Now we run the check again. So perimeter is going to keep stacking up until we hit the end. So let's trace this up. Here is the line. Here's the function line. So it's my return's got to be within my function. So return perimeter. And that looks like it's it. So let's try it. It should pass the test cases. Oh, invalid syntax. elif. Oh, elif. It's going to be I is equal to 0, which is the row, top row, or it's going to be row -1, the length of the row is the final row. So it's going to be I, it's going to be row -1. Let's try that. The same way we did call -1 for J, do row -1 for I. That should pass the test cases here. I'm pretty confident. What? Index out of range? That's impossible. If grid I J plus 1. If J is 0, which is the left column, elif J is call -1, No, I don't get it. I don't get why the j plus 1 would hurt this. Oh, unless the grid isn't that size. I have to get the size of the grid. Like if it's a 1 by 1 by 1 grid, then so for example, if it's a case like this, 1 by 1, and I'll just do this, return 4. Oh, it's still going out of range. Okay, so what time am I at? Almost an hour. Well, we got through the logic pretty well. It's now the size of the grid that's bugging me. But we gave it a good try. My code. Oh shit, it's doing what I'm doing, but let's put in my code. Fix my solution. Approach is almost correct, however, there's a few adjustments. You're correctly starting with temp 4, assuming all sides are initially counted as part of the perimeter. You're correctly reducing temp by 1 for adjacent. Okay, so that's good. So all my block logic is correct. All my temp 4 logic is correct. So what's wrong? Temp, perimeter adds temp after it's reduced. Oh, it starts the perimeter 4, adding 4, and then it minuses for everything else. I don't like the solution. I think mine's better Because right now this gives you -2, -2. Doesn't take into account the -1s the way mine does. So all I have to do is push this in here. Then that makes sense. So let's try that. Oh, you can just go perimeter and then plus equals it. So what they do is perimeter and they just get rid of temp. Which is the exact same thing I'm doing right now. Just eliminates the variable temp. Do I even have temp anymore? No, what the fuck just happened, please? Why? I just turned it all to perimeter. No. No. Dude, this is how you know I'm tired. I'm like, I just fucking made the change. not tired. Perimeter mask 1. Perimeter. 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 Delete this. There is no temp. Fix the solution I wrote the way I wrote it. Get rid of this error I keep getting. Because when we check right, it doesn't take into account the third element. So, because I'm looking one to the right, if I get to the end, I don't want to look one to the right again. So that was the main thing I think that I missed. So third element, so grid or J. So I can just check right, left, up, and down. Yeah, let's simplify it even further. We don't even need to check if actually, no, we do. I'll have to put this here. Because if it's on the edge, I only have to check what's to the right of it. Unless it's a 1 by 1. Wait, I don't have to do it for the middles. Because if it gets here by default, it's in the middle. But I do have to do it for here. And there you go. This confines it to the limits. Wrong answer. I probably missed an and. Let's modify it. Oh my god, I'm so close. Okay, so I gotta fix this. This thing's like under the influence. It's like. What am I doing? Make this written version pass. I wanted to find my mistake, but you have to query it properly. Okay, so it's saying if j check right neighbor is less than call -1. I mean, I guess there's no winning there. It's in call -1, so I don't get how it doesn't fix this issue, because j+1. Like, what if you're on the last tile? So stupid. See, this fucking ChatGPT is using the way I wrote it. I fucking wrote it. Look. I asked it to repeat itself the way I wrote it, fucking 10 times. Then I finally tell it, I'm like, yo, dumbass. If you're on the far right tile, this doesn't work, because you're still going to j+1. You're going one past the far right tile. So you have to write the way I wrote it. I'm helping this app actually fucking pass. Oh my god. My solution does this. This app is failing me. Yeah, so ChatGPT is failing me here. So I have to manually trace out what's going on. If j equals 0, I have to add this check here. Elif, it's the end. that's the edge case. Now we're at top and bottom. Let's try that. Out of range. Okay, so if I plus 1, I is the rows, if I is thing, if I is less than row minus 1. So row is the length of all the rows minus 1. That should pass everything. There we go. See, ChatGPT failed, but sometimes you just gotta use some elbow grease. Like, I was too tired, so I thought I could use ChatGPT, but as you can see, this is one of those cases where you can't use ChatGPT. You have to actually think things through. I wrote my code in there that was correct, because this is what happens. Let's go back to the description. If you're in this corner, right? If you're in this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner, you have to check specifically. You can't just check left, right, up, down, right? Because if you're in this corner, there is no left. There is no up. So you can only check right and down. And if the size of your grid has to be less than the number of columns. So L is the length of the columns minus 1, right? So if this is a 1 by 1 grid, I can't check J plus 1. You see? So I have to do this. And if you're saying, well, how come you don't do it for the other side? It's because if you have a 1 by 1, this will already handle that for both cases. So this will only handle the case if there is something to the left, right? So this kind of kills two birds with one stone. Same thing with here. If you're on the top row, it's gonna already check. You can't go I plus 1 if there's nothing underneath, if it's a 1 by 1, right? And then same thing with, if it's the end row, this already covers this with the I plus 1. It stays within bounds. So what I did was, first I created the length. I wanted to find the perimeter, so I need the length and the width and the I need to find the rows and the columns, the length of how many rows and how many columns. So that's L grid. That gives me the rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for example here, L grid will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then columns will give me a grid at 0. So what's inside here? 1, 2, 3, 4 arrays. 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So 4 columns, those are the rows. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. So that's columns. Then I'm saying if it's a 1 by 1, rows and columns, just return 4. Because there's no adjacent. You only lose perimeter values if there's something beside it. So if it's 1 by 1 and it's a tile, return 4 straight off the bat. Done. Otherwise, create a perimeter variable with 0 that we're going to increment. So then I have to go ij, right? I have to loop through ij. So I have to go each row, all the values. Next row, all the values. So this is row. Now I go in column, 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 column. Check all the values. Next row, column, 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 column. All the values. So that's what these two for loops do. And then grid ij. So if grid ij is equal to 1, this is the overarching if statement. So this covers everything inside here. If this is equal to 1, that means we found a tile. So row, column, 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 oh, tile. We found one. Now we add 4 to the perimeter, because at most you can have 4. And anything that doesn't satisfy these conditions subtracts 1 from the perimeter. So for example, I go here, row 0, column 1, that would be 0. Row 0, column 0. Column 1 is a tile. So, for example, let's say this corner one was a tile. I would have to check if the next one over is a tile and if it's within bounds of left and right. So this does a within bounds check. This does a adjacency check to see if there's another tile present. If it's an out of bounds check, this gets checked first. So we don't even look at adjacency if it's out of bounds. Same thing here, up and down. If it's out of bounds, we don't even care about adjacency. That's how Python works. We look at the first statement. It fails right away if this is out of bounds. Now we know, now we can check for is something to the left and right of it. Something's to the left. Or if something is, it's a corner tile, so if it's the bottom row, I have to check what's up top. If it's the top row, I have to check what's up bottom. And then if it's a middle row, I have to check what's on top and bottom to see if there's a tile present and subtract 1. But if it's a middle row, I have the chance to lose 2. If it's a top or bottom row, I have the chance to lose 1, right? Because there's nothing underneath, there's nothing above top, so I don't check top. But middle, there could be something up top, there could be something on the bottom. So there's 2 chances to lose 1. Right, so this is where ChatGPT fails. So if I go to ChatGPT, it checks here, row column, row column, row column, right? But it doesn't, it only reduces by 1. There's no case where it reduces by 2. So this doesn't take into account the middle column, and it doesn't take into account if you're at the right or left within bounds. After I haggled it, it finally got the bounds right, but it didn't get the middle rows up and down wrong, correct. There's no -2. So right off the bat, I know this is wrong. So look over here. I passed all the test cases, and my submission has passed and beat 5.06% of other solutions. So you've seen me go through this whole problem from scratch. I fucking fell asleep halfway. I tried consulting ChatGPT. As you could see, this isn't as reliable as you think it is, right? Everyone's like, AI this, AI that. You still need to use your brain. You still need to use this, right? And this ended up winning. This ended up getting an accepted solution that beats 5.6%. It's not optimal, right? But it saves on memory and it gets the job done, right? So, yeah. This is why we do what we do. This is why we stay up and try to attempt to do this the right way so that we don't get stuck in loops like this in ChatGPT of it spitting out the same code over and over and over. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment below. Root for humans. Peace.